seems it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Ways. I am Lindsay Sharman. I am a spiritual healer and teacher. I offer services one-on-one where I work with people on mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual goals. I do coaching and talking. I do past life readings. I do tarot readings. I do spiritual healing. I do sound healing. I have a whole host of services that I offer, including packages of those services, and all of that's available on rogueways.org. My books are there. The channeled messages I get from spiritual ancestors who I've been working with for my whole life are there, as well as on Substack at rogueways.substack.com, where you can subscribe to read those messages as they come through. You can be a free subscriber or a paid subscriber. Of course, I always appreciate your support. And so if you're a paid subscriber, you get some extra perks there on rogueways.substack.com. So there's many ways to interact with me and everything I do. Today, we're talking about surrender, and that surrender is actually one of your superpowers. And surrender can lead to the miraculous. And so let's talk about surrendering today. So a lot of people, they really just hate the idea of surrender. I mean, to be honest, we think about surrender in a really interesting way. And it's not necessarily our fault that we think of surrender in this way. So when I say to surrender, some people go, oh no, never surrender. We never surrender, right? Because we're thinking of surrender, from a point of view of this really tight and controlled, rigid worldview. And this is sort of the world we live in. And so we tend to have been trained to think of life in terms of battles, in terms of military, in terms of, fighting. In fact, the first few definitions of surrender are probably how you think of surrender. And so I want to clarify exactly what I mean. One of the first definitions of surrender is to give up possession or control of something. That is actually technically what I mean. But we're going to get back to that a little bit. What exactly are we giving up possession or control of? And it turns out to just be our tiny little ego that we want to give up possession or control of. The rest of us is still us, still ours, still here, still good. So to yield the power, control, or authority of another. And here's the catch of this part of this definition. It says often under compulsion, right? So we imagine someone coming up to us and being like, give us this thing. And we're like, oh, I surrender this to you. So again, we live in this tight, rigid society. We think of things in battle terms. We think of things in war terms. We think of things as divisive and division-based, fear-based often. And these are the sort of definitions of surrender that come to mind first. So it makes sense that a lot of people sort of are like, wait, hold up. Surrender? No, it's not only is it not a superpower, but I don't want to do it. The next definition comes under the clause of military and warfare. So even more about the control and the opposition. The act of ceasing resistance and submitting to an opponent or an authority. The formal giving up of a military force, position, or nation to another power. So again, this is reinforcing this idea that we're losing something. That we're losing something when we surrender. And the surrender we're going to talk about today, you could never lose anything. And in fact, you gain so much by letting go, because what you're actually letting go of is the illusion of who and what you are. So we'll get deeper into that. There's a legal and a contractual form of surrender that's very similar to what we've talked about. And then there's the emotional and psychological, or the spiritual and philosophical versions of surrender. And that's what we're talking about today. So I'll just read you some of those definitions. One is the act of letting go of resistance, control, or attachment to a particular outcome. That's actually huge. This is actually part of the surrender we're talking about, because when you can surrender spiritually, when you can surrender in the right way, understanding what you're doing and choosing to do it fully, you actually let go of all the attachment to the outcome. You acknowledge that you don't actually know what's best or how to get it. And so you're just letting go completely, right? When people say, Jesus, take the wheel, this is actually what they're talking about. they may not even understand fully what they're talking about, but it is a spiritual concept in every tradition, and every background has some version of this. The acceptance of the situation without struggle, often associated with trust or faith. So again, this is the emotional and psychological. I trust that things are going to turn out to my best interest for my highest outcome, even if I don't understand right now how. Right? We hear these parables of these people who, something bad seems to happen to them, but they're just seemingly fine about it. And people are like, why aren't you upset? And they're like, I don't know what the future is going to hold. This might have actually been to my benefit. And then even though it seems like it couldn't be, it is in the end. And you can look back in your own life and you can see that happening, right? You can look back and you can see times where it seemed like things were bad, but actually what came about because of that hardship was way better than you could have ever expected. So if you see that enough, if you understand that enough, you start to have more of this surrender energy, not just in really precise prime moments, which is kind of what we're talking about today, but kind of all of the time, where it's not that you're weak. It's not that you're a pushover. It's not that you don't have, goals and desires. It's that you understand that in any given moment, you might not actually be aware of exactly how things are benefiting you. You just trust that they're going to work out because they always have. But spiritually and philosophically, we also have some definitions of surrender: the act of yielding to a higher power, divine will, or universal flow. Also, the release of egoic control in favor of deeper wisdom, love, or truth. So this is where we're actually looking at surrender, this emotional, psychological, spiritual, philosophical definitions of surrender, not the militarily, not the legal, not the contractual, not this world of control and rigidity, but the other world of the inner, right? And here's where we want to look at surrender. So we'll talk about it a little bit, this idea of opening up to something larger than yourself. And very specifically, we mean larger than your egoic self. So there's this version of you, it's the personality, right? It's this small you. It's this you that maybe believes that you're a body walking around on a planet, instead of the you that understands you're actually an eternal being of love, of light, of source, origin, right? Of a spiritual nature. So surrendering to that aspect of yourself, or surrendering to source itself, to God itself, to love itself, to the universal flow itself, right? That's what we're surrendering to. What we're surrendering, what we're offering up is the egoic self, the self that believes we are, I'm Lindsay in a body. It's like, not really, right? I'm not. I know that because I've experienced it directly. You may know that because you've experienced it directly. It's another thing to walk around knowing it, being it, right? It's another thing to intentionally give up the personality, the egoic, the attachment to the outcome, and to trust that something else is actually larger than you, more divine than this little egoic self, and can flow through you, right? This is huge on the spiritual path, because when you can do this, then you can channel. You are the channel. When you surrender the egoic self, you become the divine self, and this body actually becomes the tool through which that energy flows. You're a healer, you're a seer, you're a prophet. We are all these things once we get that little ego out of the way. And so we can become this source flow and this channel for source flow the more we do that. And that is really what surrender is. All right. It is different from, if you were to look into sort of dark magic, black magic, things where people vacate themselves and invite an entity in. That's not what we're talking about. Never surrender to that, right? We're talking about being your highest self. We're talking about being in tune with the flow that is already you, right? We're being in alignment with the good, true, and beautiful, and we are opening ourselves up to that by removing this attachment to what we think we know or expect about reality and ourselves. Different things. Those are different things. So I'm going to tell you a few stories of actually doing this, right? And some of them I didn't mean to, but I learned a lot by doing it, right? And so one of these stories, I was living on a river, and I had my beautiful little black and white pit bull. Her name was Sammy. And Sammy had a lot of issues, as many pit bulls often do. She had been actually a breeding mother, and so she had been not treated well most of her life and lost her puppies over and over again, and just a lot of trauma and abuse. So she was very untrusting of most people, and I did a lot of work with her to get her to a place where she definitely trusted me. We had a great relationship, and she had a great relationship with my family and their dogs. But anyone who she didn't know well, and I didn't take a lot of time getting her used to, might be a problem, but definitely animals were a trigger, right, for her, because she had all of this trauma. So unfortunately, living on a river, you can't actually control which animals come through your river, right? You can have a fence around your yard and you can do a great job at this, but eventually someone's going to float down the river. Some animals are going to walk down the river. And that was the type of river I lived on. So one day I was out in the yard with Sammy, and down the river came a couple of dogs, and I saw them, and I knew, and I was like, don't react, because she'll sense your reaction. Don't be afraid, because then she'll be afraid. And so I tried to very calmly, hey, Sammy, like, let's go inside. But it was just a moment too late. And she looked and saw these two dogs coming down the river, and she just flew towards them. And they knew right away too that, like, this dog doesn't mess around. We're in danger. So they took off running, which made her chase them even more. So now I'm in this horrible situation where my very traumatized dog is, perhaps, I've never seen her technically attack an animal, but she always reacts. So I'm assuming she's going to go rip them to shreds. And then I'm going to have to put her down. And then she's going to have ruined someone's life because they will have lost their dog, right? They're our family. You can't do that. So I was devastated instantly at what I assumed was going to happen next. I'm running down the river after her. I'm screaming her name, Sammy, Sammy, Sammy. I'm hoping she'll just hear me and have some sort of clarity and respond and just come back home. And it's not working. And I stopped, and I just realized I'm not capable of stopping her. If she's going to be stopped, if something's going to cut through the rage or the terror or whatever it is that's in her mind right now and bring any sort of clarity, it's not me yelling. It will be something higher than me that will cut through to her and will get her to stop and come home. And so I stopped, and I said to myself internally, God, source, anybody, if you can stop her, please just do it. It's out of my hands. And literally right when I stopped and prayed and sort of became more present in that awareness, and just let go of the situations that I know I can't control this. I know I have got nothing on this situation. She stopped. Literally, she was maybe a half a mile up the river, and she stopped right then. And she turned around and looked at me, and I didn't yell, and I didn't scream, and I didn't say, Sammy, come on. I just calmly said, just keep going. Whatever is working is working. Like, please just, like, now get her to come home. And she kind of looked back to the dogs, and you could see her want to keep chasing them. And then you saw her look back at me again. Something cut through to her, right? Something cut through all that emotion and stopped her in her tracks and got her to look back and think about it, which is very undog-like in that moment, right? But our souls, dogs have them too, right? They are connected to this source. So that energy was able to come through and connect with her, stop all of that emotion, all of that instinct, all of that, and just dead in its tracks. And she just turned around, and then she just started coming home, and she came all the way back, and there was no bloodshed, and there was no terror, and there was no horror. And my beautiful little happy little dog was still my beautiful happy little dog. Got to live out the rest of her days in comfort and happiness, which she deserved. So thank God, right? There's nothing I could have done. There's no way I could have stopped that or prevented that. And in that moment, because I chose to stop and instead connect to something higher and be the channel for it, let myself completely get out of the way, gave up completely, no ability. I knew I had no ability, and I also had no attachment to what happened or didn't happen anymore because it was out of my hands. And that is actually what stopped it. It's very different from our ideas of manifestation, right? Very different from if I would have tried to like reach out to her mind to mind, which you can do. I had communicated with her in that way before. But in my experience, that takes a calm mind to work well, right? It takes her being calm and aware. It takes me being calm and aware in order to have this sort of psychic conversation with your animals or anything else. And so that wasn't going to happen, right? So to have stepped out of the way and allowed this to come through and really work like that, it in my mind was a miracle. I think other people, maybe you had to be there, but that's what seemed to happen to me. So I understood in that moment too. I saw the whole thing step by step. I saw me get emotional. I saw me attached to the situation. I saw egoic Lindsay try to control everything. And then I saw egoic Lindsay stop and realize there was no control of the situation. I saw egoic Lindsay step out of the way, and I saw that higher level energy come through, connect with my dog and bring her home. Right? So this is the superpower. Couldn't have done it any other way. It's beyond our ability to explain. If you accept what I experienced as reality, you can't explain it any other way, right? So pretty cool stuff. I had another experience where I was with someone who was, they were experiencing some severe, again, trauma-related, triggered state. They were going to do something that would be harmful for themselves. And they kind of knew that, but you've seen people in these emotional states, like they sometimes, and we've done it ourselves, I'm sure, sometimes you're just bent on some certain thing happening and you maybe don't even know why, and you just, right? And so this person was essentially trying to leave where they were safe and go to where they were unsafe. And I was trying to stop them. And it would work a little bit. I would get through to them. And they'd say, oh, yeah, you're okay. All right. Yeah, I'm going to stay here. And this is what I need to do. And then sort of the emotions and the dissociation and other things would come back. And they'd be, I have to go. I have to go do that. And I just try again. And finally, they were actively leaving the house. And I just knew. I knew they didn't want to. I knew if they left, there was great danger. I knew I had to do something. So very rarely would I resort to any kind of physical force, but I just tried to stand in their way, right? Like just, you have to go through me then, right? I'm not going to like punch you and fight you, but I'm going to be in your way. So you really have to work for this if it's what you're going to create for yourself. And they were pushing me. And I realized they were stronger than me and it was working. They were pushing me. And so I remembered, this is sequentially what happened next, right? So a year apart or so, but this is after Sammy ran down the river. I remembered that moment, and I remembered there is something greater than me that if this is the right choice or if this is the right way, can come through me and can turn the situation around, right? So I did this same sort of prayer. I said, I can't control this. I'm not literally physically strong enough to stop this from happening. So if this is actually in alignment with this person's will, divine will, and it's what's good for them, then make it happen. My body is your tool. I'm just the channel, right? And literally, I felt the energy fill me and I just stopped being moved. I didn't become stronger. I wasn't pushing back more. There was just an energy that suddenly added to this physical body, and it stopped this person. And what's really interesting to me is I felt that, I knew that, but this person was kind of right up against me. And so right in my ear, they whispered, whatever you're doing, it's working. Keep doing it. So their higher self actually broke through as well and channeled through them in order to acknowledge this is actually what I want. Please stop me right now. And it's working. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And then it just all reversed back into the safe place we went, door closed. And that was the end of the struggle. Actually, things started to turn around then. So again, I got out of the way. I acknowledged I'm not actually capable of this, right? Which the ego hates to do. So there's some level of practices, there's some level of self-awareness you develop over time, right? Again and again, where you just say to yourself, like, I love myself, I'm great. And also I'm not capable. I'm not this big deal. And I'm not actually special or anything, right? I have to get out of the way. This higher level energy can come through. You hear about this again and again with channelers. but we don't always think about it in our day-to-day life, right? You hear about it again and again with spiritual workers. I say it all the time. People will be like, "Oh, I love your book." And I'll be like, "Thanks. I didn't really write it." It just came through me. It's channeled, right? Or they'll be like, "Oh, wow, how did you heal, my broken hand?" I didn't. I just opened the channel and this energy came through. You hear that all the time, but we don't always think about it as our just moment to moment when you're in a crisis, when you're in a problem, when you're right, give it up and let God, right? So again, we hear these phrases and we hear these different things, but we just don't always connect it back to like what are we actually doing and how are we living? What are we choosing? And you can choose this the more and more. So that was another example of this. There's another one. It's a little bit scarier. So trigger warning, nothing horrifying happens. I get away in the end, but I didn't know that at the time that's what would happen. And this is an interesting one because it is just a little bit different. So I was leaving a bar and it was, nighttime. It was probably like 10 or 11. It wasn't super late, but, it was a college town. I was getting my master's degree. So I was in college. I'd had a drink. I'd been dancing and whatnot, and I wasn't trashed or drunk, but I was just, not completely sober. And I was leaving, and this person who had actually earlier accosted me on the dance floor, as happens from time to time, right? So I didn't really think much of it when that happened because, sometimes you get groped, not cool, it happens. So I just didn't think too much about it. But that same person actually apparently had their eye on me most of the night, perhaps. Because as I left, that same person came out right behind me. Literally, as I was sort of like opening the door to leave, their arms came around me from behind. And I, as you probably would, assumed it was a friend, someone I knew. And they were just sort of like, being funny, like, "Oh, I'll just hug her from behind. She won't know it's me. And it'll be so fun," or something. So I just was like, "Ha ha." I was kind of laughing like, "Oh, this must be my friend." And then I kind of quickly realized like, that's not very friendly actually. And I kind of was struggling to like turn around and see who it was, and they weren't letting me. And then I was sort of struggling to just get away because that's now getting very strange. And then I couldn't get away. And then even tighter was being held and being sort of like taken away from the door. So now I'm realizing, oh, I'm not safe at all. I'm being abducted, actually. So there's a group of people around me. This is a whole traumatizing experience that I've had to work through. There's a group of people who are out on the street smoking, just hanging out outside the bar. None of them helped me when I asked for help. None of them did anything, in fact. I was making eye contact with people and saying, "I don't know this person. Please help me get away from them." And they weren't doing anything. This is actually kind of normal, unfortunately. It's a psychological groupthink effect that humans do. If one person would have broke ranks and came to help me, everyone would have. But because no one was doing that, no one would. It's very, very ironic. So I've had to learn that and forgive, understand why people do the things they do. They weren't trying to be bad people. And so I'm being dragged away from this bar now. The crowd of people is receding into the background, going down a dark street where there's no more businesses really or anything going on. So it's getting more and more dangerous. I'm realizing like again, not strong enough. Like I'm not physically as strong as most men. I'm a small woman. So cannot even my full adrenaline is on at this point. Every muscle in my body. I'm, by the way, in some of the best shape I've ever been in my life at that point. Swam every day, ran every day, did stairs, like just buff. Yeah, didn't matter. Couldn't get away. Just locked in solid. Crazily, I had remembered all of a sudden this Oprah episode. I don't even like Oprah. Okay. I mean, like, she's cool. I was just like, not my thing. From decades before, when I was maybe 12, 13, 14 years old. My friend loved Oprah, was watching Oprah. And so I just was watching it because I happened to be at her house and she just happened to be watching Oprah. And Oprah just so happened to say, when you're a woman, if a man is abducting you, you are probably not strong enough to break away. But if you can become a dead weight, they will drop you. If you can do it, they will drop you and you can get away. Not even joking. I just like suddenly remembered this. And I also knew, and this is happening much faster than the explanation is even taking. As soon as I remembered that, I realized I think you just have one chance at that. Like, I don't think you can try to become a dead weight and fail, and then, then they'll know what the game is, and then they'll be ready to sort of like grapple with you, right? So like, I knew that too. This is actually my higher self informing me, by the way. I've learned since how this all works, and this is sort of the guidance you get, right? And so it was like, hey, remember Oprah, and be ready to like commit to this. And by commit, I mean you have to do something you've never done before. Most likely, I don't know anybody who has, which is let every single impulse vanish from your body. No energy anywhere, no muscle strained anywhere. And just drop yourself to the ground with full surrender. Full trust that whatever happens will be better than being taken away. It turns out when you struggle, you're actually helping your abductor carry you. So all the struggling I was doing, all the fighting I was doing was adding kinetic energy that could make it easier for this person to carry you. Whereas if they had to carry a dead weight, much harder, almost impossible. The TV shows make it look easy, but you try to pick up a dead weight, not going to happen, even if they're much smaller than you. Parents know this. Their children might do it to them. So I knew this. I remembered this. I recalled this. I was guided to recall this. And then I also understood, okay, you're going to do this, and you're going to do it once, and you're going to do it perfectly. And you're going to do that by just vacating all sense, which is nearly impossible to do when you are terrified for your life. So real full surrender, not just, spiritually, not just egoic, but physically as well. But it's such a perfect metaphor because it's the same exact reasoning as when we're doing this otherwise in a spiritual or in a mental or in an emotional way. When we are engaged and we're egoic and we're controlling and we're attached, we're adding energy to this thing that is not actually what we want to happen. I don't want my dog to run away, but I'm adding all this energy to it. I don't want this person to escape from the safe place and go do something very dangerous to themselves, right? But I'm adding all this energy to it. But when we surrender, the abductor can no longer carry us. The dog no longer has the energy. The person no longer has the energy with which to fight against or to receive in order to bolster their own maneuverings. It's similar to if you're fighting with somebody, right? If you're fighting, you're both fighting. Well, you're both making the fight continue. You have to actually exit the fighting mentality and surrender. And then all of a sudden, there's not energy being added to this fire anymore. Right? All of a sudden, it's devoid of the energy that fed it, and so it ends. It sounds like obvious, but we just don't do it all the time. So I had to do this physically. I gave it my all. I surrendered completely. I dropped. I felt him drop me, and then I just got up and ran. Didn't look back. Didn't wonder if he was close on my tail. I made it into a different business that was open. The rest is a different story, but I got away. I was safe. So it worked, right? Physically, it works. Mentally, it works. Emotionally, it works. Spiritually, it works. It is a superpower. I'm not stronger than that man. I could not have fought my way out of his grasp, but I could surrender my way out of his grasp. So remember, we were talking about the definitions, and we think about all this rigidity and this control and all these military and these battle, definitions of surrender that feel bad to us. We don't want to surrender and give up. This is an actual physical confrontation and an actual battle. And surrender was actually the thing that allowed me to retain everything I wanted, to achieve everything I wanted, and to escape from being controlled by another. Interestingly, right? Doesn't fit the definition, but it does. It's actually the best definition of surrender. So that is another example of this superpower being turned on that made me capable of doing things I couldn't otherwise do very, very directly. And this is my most favorite example of surrender, actually. And this image doesn't even do it justice, really. It could never actually express the reality of what occurred. But this is a plant medicine journey I did, of which I've talked about before on my show, Rogue Ways. You can find it on every podcast platform. You can find it on many video platforms. And you can find the episode called Toad on the Mountain if you want to hear more detailed version of what I was asked to share about my plant medicine journey. It's not always something you want to share. A lot of these experiences are very personal. They don't translate well anyway, as I said, and it's really for you. But I am a teacher and a healer, and so I'm asked often to share things, and so I do share some of this experience. And so this plant medicine, it's not actually plant medicine, but I just throw it in the same category because it's a spiritually powerful medicine. And you can do this similar drug to this as a plant medicine journey, which would be ayahuasca. So DMT is the substance. In this case, it comes from toads. So, bufo is a toad excretion, which you can then smoke in this case and have a transcendental experience. And, so plant medicine, animal medicine, should we call it that? But same style, right, of journeying. And I don't really do this. I did a lot of drugs as a child. So I was very traumatized. I was in very dark places. I have come so far and healed so much. And so I just don't really do any drugs. I don't drink. I don't use THC, like nothing anymore. So I've had my fill, right? But I also respond when I'm called. And I was very, very specifically, and I always emphasize this because I don't necessarily think these journeys are for everyone. And I think some people are trying to sort of like just supercharge what they think is their spiritual path. And so they go running to do as much of this as they can. And that's not always what's best for you. So I say, respond to the call if you have the call. If ayahuasca calls you and you feel like doing it, do it, right? If psilocybin calls you, do it. I facilitate psilocybin journeys. It's one of my services that I offer. I'm a fan. I don't necessarily use it myself. But I was called very directly to come and do bufo. And by very directly, I mean, like, I don't know how else to explain it. I was told to go do bufo in this place at this time with this person and etc. So I went and I did it. And, I'll say too, I have a lot of resistance to having even more psychedelic experiences. Because again, I'm just sort of done with that. I've had plenty and I don't need any more. I have a resistance to it as well because I've seen that a lot of times actually what's coming through people when they use substances like this is pretty dark. Negative entities can use things like this sometimes. So I have a lot of caution, a lot of care and concern and intention when I go about any of these things. And that's how I do it for other people too. It's exceptionally protected and safe because it's such a vulnerable place to be. For a lot of people, there's a lot of healing in that, and that's the point of it. And so that's why I answered the call and I went and I did this. So, when I first went into the experience, I can't even really put this in linear description. So I'll just jump to the part where I was at one point both experiencing so much on so many levels and in so many dimensions of time and space. And at the same time, I could see a part of myself that was like desperately holding on to something for like dear life and just like not like being open to the experience and not releasing, right? And I actually, from the point of view of my highest self, could see the smallest me in my body way back down on earth. And I could see that desperate clinging and that holding on. And I yelled to myself, surrender, which in my body came out of my mouth. So everyone who was, around me during the ceremony heard me yell, surrender as a command, surrender. And my body and that small egoic part of me that was still holding on heard that and surrendered. And that's when I then saw the face of God. And again, it's hard to describe in linear terms exactly how it went down, but I yelled surrender to myself. I did surrender. That little piece of me, that egoic part of me that was actually scared. As much as I've experienced all sorts of stuff, still scared at letting go completely and trusting the flow and really experiencing it. So again, I was already experiencing all of that, but there was part of me holding on, yelled surrender, actually let go, and then everything opened up even more. I would have already thought I had been seeing all time and space and every dimension, all these things, but even more opened up. And I also opened my physical eyes at this moment, and I just looked for a moment. And again, somewhat hard to describe, but I was looking up at trees. They were sort of moving the sky, the clouds. Some people who were doing the ceremony would sort of come in and out of my view, doing various things, playing instruments, wafting sage and different stuff. And the scene I saw for just a few seconds became a face, but it was too perfect. It wasn't just like you can see faces in some things. It was like here was someone's head that was an eye, and a tree clump came down, was the other eye, and a bird flew through, and that made the nose, and some smoke wafted and made the mouth, and there was the face of God, and it was talking to me. And so much was said. And I said, part of it was like, how can it be this perfect? How did they all know? How did the tree know? How did the bird know? How did the cloud know? How did the people here know to move just in that way at that time to make the face of God that was talking to me in this experience? And God said, because I am all of them. They are all me. That is what this is. There isn't anything that isn't me. So of course I can talk to you in this way. Of course I can be a face if I need to be a face for you. And I thought, of course, duh. Like I know that. But also the level of perfection, the level of understanding that really, truly, that is actually what we all are, is just another manifestation of God. Not different, not separate, just this. And that is such a healing feeling and knowing. I got to purge so much out of my body and my mental constructs, that whatever that old fear was that was still clutching onto something that had to surrender, right? Emotionally, just so much, which of course the face of God would do. If your face of God shows up and says things to you, you're going to heal some things. You're going to release some stuff. And also to just remember deeply, to know deeply how perfect everything is all the time. Hard to connect to sometimes when you're not in that place, in that state. Hard to remember when we feel like we're suffering, that actually everything is perfect and that we are one with God. Kind of hard to remember when we see ourselves making mistakes or failing at something, that actually even the failures are perfect. In fact, one of the things that God said to me was that even my doubt was perfect, because still, as much as I've healed people and been to other dimensions and talked to all these other beings and channeled through all these things and all of these experiences, you'd think that I had not a shred of doubt in me. And while I have perfect faith, I still doubt. I still question everything, all the time, including myself, including God, including God literally talking to me. I'm still like, are you sure? Right? So you can have perfect faith and also doubt, right? This is what makes us human. We're able to live and be in paradox. And it was another really beautiful reminder that surrendering is what gives us access to the highest realms, to the highest levels of self, to the highest truth, to the highest faith, to the lack of doubt. We can't actually create it for ourselves. We can try, we can get really close sometimes, we can do a really great job, but it is actually only in those moments of surrender that miracles occur. And we can be transformed at every level when we do so, right? Again, like I said, I physically healed, I emotionally healed, I mentally healed. In fact, in every instance that I gave today of surrender, I healed. And it wasn't the point of it, but it is an automatic effect of becoming the channel, of being in surrender, is healing. So again, I actually never set out to heal people. This is one of the services I offer, right? Is spiritual healing, sound healing. It was not ever my intention. But as I stepped into my channel more and more, surrendered more and more to that highest flow, became this sort of channel for these energies to come through, healing just occurred. It occurred for me and it occurred for other people. And again, physically, emotionally, mentally, all of it. It is healing to be in that state. It is healing to be around people who are in that state. And that is part of why we do that. It's part of why we come together to do healing work. It's part of why I love doing group work, which, by the way, I do every first and third Tuesday at the Lightning Oracle Round. So if you're looking to get a message for yourself or an answer to a question through the channel, then come join for that. Because again, just being in that field is healing. Again, it's not the intention even. It just is the secondary effect of being the channel. It's why I'm offering a retreat this summer in Crestone, Colorado for the summer solstice. You can find all the information for that on my site at rogueways.org under retreat. You can also find it in the shop. And you can come join us. There's still room. And that's going to be so powerful because we'll be together, be a group of people. And I will be surrendering and being the channel. And so will other people there. Like everyone's at a different spot, but once one person does it, everyone kind of gets into it too. And when we're all in that channel, oh my goodness, timelines are transformed. The earth is transformed. And this is actually really important at this time of Earth's changes of the cosmic influences that are coming through our solar system and our sun in order to transform Earth and our consciousness. It's really important that we do this more and more, that we surrender more and more, that we come together more and more, and that we create this for ourselves. And so, the more we understand that you are the channel, not the doer. You aren't the one getting things done. No matter what tradition, what practice, if you're learning to do tarot or you're doing Reiki or you're any of them, what you are actually doing is learning to get out of the way and just let the message come through. Let the energy come through. Just be the channel. My very, very first shamanic teacher, way back in the day. I've never chosen a teacher. They just show up and they're all of a sudden in my face and all of a sudden I'm learning and I've never had a choice. But she taught me we are the hollow bone, right? When we get out of the way, we're just this hollow, empty channel for things to come through. Again, if you make it into something it isn't, it sounds bad. We said, don't surrender, don't give up, don't, vacate yourself. Well, you don't vacate yourself. You just get out of the way. So the channel's open. You already are the channel. You already are the channel. You are not the doer. You are not the one who does the healing. You are not the one who, is the psychic. You are not the one who's, getting the message. You are the channel for it to come through. It just exists and it comes through every time you make space for it. Every time you get out of the way. Every time you surrender. 100% of the time. And that's actually the skill you're learning, no matter which of these traditions you're doing, no matter where you're at in the process, you're learning to get out of the way. That's it. It's the key. It's so simple. And that doesn't mean it's easy for everyone. That is what you're doing. You're becoming this channel that you already are. You're getting out of the way. So this energy that's already flowing through you can just flow even more sort of solidly with even more presence and energy. That's it. That is the point. And I love to help people achieve that. I love to teach people that. And again, everyone's in a different place. Sometimes, we're learning just to sort of heal at the level of understanding ourselves and the world and how to be in it. And sometimes we're learning higher level practices. And sometimes we're ready to really step into it and start channeling and being of that. And I teach at every level of that journey. That's what I teach everybody. You could be the pure beginner, you could be, pretty advanced, and that's what I do. So if I can help you in any way with the healing, with the getting the messages through, with helping you become the channel, then you can find all of my soul services and healing at rogueways.org under schedule a session or schedule or sessions. These are all available there for you to schedule anytime you want, anytime you're ready. Easy, easy. If you would instead like to read the messages that I get channeled through from the spiritual ancestors who are the ascended masters who I've been working with for my entire life, if you'd like to read what they're saying about this time on Earth, about the changes, about any other messages that come through, rogueways.substack.com is the place to be. And if you are interested in that group channeling session and being in the healing field at a very, very accessible rate and place, you can go to the Lightning Oracle Tuesdays. They're every first and third Tuesday of the month, and you schedule them in the same place that you schedule all my other services. So if you want to go directly there and do that, it's at calendly.com/rogueways. Again, you can get there through rogueways.org, or you can go there directly to calendly.com/rogueways. It's all there, all connected, all in one place. And so it's easy for you to come and connect with me, which is what I would love to do. So go to rogueways.org and start today. All my books, all the orgone is there. I make powerful orgone that you've never seen before that is super exceptional and high level. And so I do custom orgone as well, towers and votives, all kinds. I have pendants that you can wear if you like to wear your orgone. And that's such a powerful tool as well. So my whole goal is to empower you, to empower yourself, so that we can all heal all of ourselves and all of the world. That's the goal. And until you do, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Glued to them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.